It was late afternoon when David Matthews parked his old truck in front of the restaurant. The sun was just beginning to dip lower in the sky, painting the town in soft orange light. From the outside, the place looked like any small American diner. A neat row of windows lined the front, catching the glow of the fading day. The sign above the door was simple, nothing flashy, just the name painted in steady, bold letters. The kind of place that promised warm meals and honest service without needing to shout for attention. David sat for a moment, his hands resting quietly on the steering wheel. He wasn't dressed like a man who owned half a dozen successful restaurants across the state. He wore a plain brown hoodie, old jeans, and boots that had seen years of work. His beard was gray now, and his hair had thinned, but his eyes still carried the same sharpness that had helped him build a business from nothing. But today, he wasn't here as the owner. He wasn't here as the man with power. Today, he wanted to be just another customer, quiet, unnoticed, and watching from the background. He wanted to see how the diner was really running when nobody knew the boss was in the room. He stepped inside, and the little bell above the door gave a soft ring. The dining area was warm and inviting. Booths lined the walls, their red cushions worn but clean. A few families sat together, sharing burgers and fries. An older couple near the window sipped coffee while speaking in low, content voices. The smell of grilled food and freshly baked bread hung in the air, rich and steady, filling the space with a sense of home. A young waiter approached him with a polite smile and led him to a booth near the corner. David slid into the seat, glancing around the diner. He studied the staff carefully, not in a cold way, but with a quiet focus. The waiters seemed rushed yet polite. The cook behind the counter moved with quick hands, flipping burgers and stirring pots. Everything looked fine, at least on the surface. David picked up the menu, though he already knew it by heart. He ordered a simple meal, a cheeseburger, fries, and coffee. Nothing fancy, just the kind of food the place was built on. The waiter nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. As David waited, he leaned back in the booth and listened. The murmur of customers mixed with the clinking of plates and the sizzle from the grill. It was all ordinary, all expected. But then, faintly, he heard something else. Something that did not belong. A sound. It was soft at first, almost lost under the noise of the diner. But as he focused, it grew clearer. A muffled sob, followed by another. Crying. David's eyes narrowed slightly. He glanced toward the kitchen door, swinging open and shut as servers carried plates out. The sound was coming from there, from behind the line of noise and heat. His food arrived a few minutes later, but he didn't touch it right away. He stirred his coffee slowly, listening again. The crying continued, quiet but steady. And then, raised voices joined it. A man's tone, sharp and harsh, cutting through the muffled kitchen air. David set down his spoon. His chest tightened, not with anger at first, but with concern. Something wasn't right. Moving calmly, almost silently, David walked toward the kitchen. He pushed the swinging door open and stepped inside. The kitchen was alive with movement, steam rising, pans sizzling, the air thick with heat and the smell of food. But in the center of it, a scene froze him in place. A young woman stood by the counter, her hands covering her face. She wore a gray shirt and a black apron, but her shoulders were shaking. Her soft sobs filled the air, heartbreaking and raw. Across from her stood a man, also in an apron, his arms crossed tightly across his chest. His mouth was open mid-shout, his face twisted with frustration. The words didn't matter, David had heard enough in the tone alone. The girl lowered her hands for a second, revealing red cheeks and swollen eyes, before covering her face again. David stepped closer, the old floor creaking under his boots. The man shouting noticed him first. His voice stopped, his expression changing to surprise, then discomfort. The girl didn't see him at first, lost in her own grief. David's voice was calm when he finally spoke, carrying a weight that silenced the room. "What's going on here?" The girl hesitated, glancing at the man beside her. He gave a quick shake of his head, warning her to stay silent. But David noticed. His gaze grew sharper, heavier. Finally, the girl whispered, I messed up an order. And, he got upset. "I'm sorry." Her apology cut deeper than anything else. Not the mistake, but the fact that she felt she had to beg forgiveness with tears. David turned his eyes to the man. His tone remained steady, but there was no mistaking the authority beneath it. Upset is one thing, he said quietly. But this is something else. The man shifted defensively. She keeps making mistakes. We're busy, and I can't. David raised a hand, stopping him. That's enough. The kitchen was silent. Even the other cooks, who had been pretending not to notice, now turned their eyes toward the scene. David looked at the girl again. What's your name? Sarah, she whispered. Sarah, he repeated gently. Well, Sarah, I see how much this job means to you. Mistakes happen. What matters is learning, not fear. Her eyes filled again, but this time with relief. Then David turned to the man, his voice calm but firm. I'm David Matthews. I own this diner. The words dropped heavy in the room. The man's face drained of color. Even Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief. I came here today as a customer, David continued, to see how things were going. And what I found is not what I built this place for. This diner was meant to be a place of respect. Do you understand? The man nodded stiffly, shame written on his face. David stayed for a while longer, watching as Sarah returned to her work. She was still shaky, but calmer now. The room's balance had shifted, the air lighter. When he left the kitchen, his booth held a fresh cup of coffee waiting. He sat again, this time taking a bite of his meal. The burger was warm, the fries crisp. Simple food, done right. He thought of Sarah, her trembling hands, her whispered name, and hoped she would find her strength again. He thought of the man who had shouted, and hoped he would remember the lesson. And he thought of the diner itself, the dream he had built from nothing, still alive and beating in the heart of the town. David finished his coffee slowly, letting the warmth settle him. When he finally stood to leave, he glanced back at the kitchen door. Through the small window, he saw Sarah working quietly, her movements steadier now. She noticed him watching and gave the smallest nod of gratitude. David returned the nod, then stepped out into the cool night. The bell above the door gave one last gentle ring. The town was quiet, the streets bathed in silver streetlight. David walked back to his truck, climbed in, and looked once more at the glowing diner behind him. It wasn't just a restaurant. It was a place of second chances, of respect, of simple kindness. And as long as he had a say, it would always remain that way.